So we're going to talk to Jay, pronouns he, him, in Idaho, is calling about detransition, but regrets it. So I think this is going to be such an interesting conversation. Jay, why don't you get into your situation?
Well, like I said, I detransitioned because I went home for the holidays and my parents really got in my head. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I kind of got into religion because of them. And I told them I detransitioned because they really got in my head over the holidays. And like the way they treated me was like a complete 180. And that's like the most painful part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay, is the pronouns that you listed the pronouns that you prefer?
I just like to stay anonymous on the internet.
That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. I just pronouns, not your name. I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable in how we want to refer to you. I may just refer to you as Jay and not use pronouns at all if you prefer.
Yeah, I'd prefer that.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I'll just
Thank you,
put
Jay.
none in the slot, then people kind of get what's going on. I have thoughts, but go ahead,
Yeah.
Josie. You're ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, I just want to say that what you're experiencing you're not alone. I have a friend of mine, and she also detransitioned, and she is now dealing with her transition, and is actually in Texas and is dealing with this and it was a lot of it had to do with family and family support. So just know that you're not alone, and that that the community, wherever you are in your transition, is going to support you regardless of which direction that you choose to take. So I just want to just say that it's incredibly brave for you to have this conversation with us, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there that are feeling exactly the way you do, and this conversation is really important. So I just want to thank you and acknowledge that.
Jay,
First off,
I don't know how much you know about my story. I actually also detransitioned. I first transitioned at like 14. That what lasted till I was about 17 or so, and then I detransitioned, went off to college, tried for like 5 years, my real best effort, my real college try to be a man, and eventually just kind of had to realize that my transness was not something that was going to go away. I do want to totally echo what Josie said on I don't want you to feel like you have a destination you have to get to. You know, if you end up being like non-binary, or if you end up being a trans woman, or if you end up being like a cis person, it doesn't matter. Like, you, anywhere is valid. I just want you to feel happy and comfortable in your own skin. But I just want to like totally echo that you are not alone. Like, when I detransitioned in high school, while I was out as trans, I was getting death threats like almost daily for a period of time. I was just getting harassed constantly. I got called slurs every single day in school without fail. And when I detransitioned, all of a sudden, people liked me. I got a superlative in my, like, you know, like how the people who get like their little picture in their yearbook at high school, they're like, oh, this person, we remember them. I got one of those. Nobody liked me for the first like 3 years of high school because I was so fucking queer. And I tried really hard for a long time. My relationship with my dad got better. And lots of my religious family, they started talking to me again. And because of that, I spent a long time trying to appease them, to make them happy, to make them see me and understand me. I wanted so desperately to feel like they saw me. And I can't see the future. I don't want you to feel like I'm just telling you this is your path is going to be the same as mine. I eventually had to accept that my dad was never going to come around, and my extended family was never going to come around. And I had to start working on why I hated my transness so much. And it came from a lot of what you're talking about, where like my family loved me when I was cis, but they had reservations when I was trans, and how bullshit that was. yeah, I don't want you to feel like you have a destination you have to go down. I just want you to know that you don't have to escape your transness, and you don't have to be what's going to make other people happy. You should be what's going to make you happy. And if that means you lose some people along the way, that might happen. But what's also going to happen is you're going to find people who really love you for who you are and who validate who you are and make you feel seen and heard and accepted. I really hope you hold on, and I hope you have people you can talk to and like a therapist or something to work through a lot of this stuff with, because I also did it alone, and I really just tried to beat all those feelings really far down and not have to face them. And it completely ate me alive. And I just don't want that same thing to happen to you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay, one of the things that's really important to understand is isolation is a very cruel thing, and it allows you to kind of like start being with those thoughts instead of being able to express who you are. Do you have a social network that you hang out with often, or have friends that you hang out with often?
Yeah, I go to an LGBT friendly church.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any LGBTQ centers that are outside of church that you also frequent?
No, I guess I should do more of that.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say like the people that you are currently with or in building community with is not wrong, but sometimes it's good to kind of like branch out because everybody has different points of views, everybody has different opinions and different things, the way they approach different things. I think that's really critical. I'll tell you, Jay, one of the things that I remember, and I don't think I don't know if maybe I have shared this story on the line, but um, I I remember when I first was coming out, and I called my local LGBTQ center, and I didn't even know how to even refer to myself, and I'm just like, I don't. What do I do? Like and then the person on the other line, still a dear friend of mine, she's like a sister to me to this day, was like, "Oh, we have a group of folks that we meet and we talk about transition, and there's people from all over." I went to that community center, and I sat in my car for 45 minutes before I even walked out that door to go into that space with community. And I remember going in, I finally get the nerve to go in there, and I sat down, and they were announcing, they were like, "Oh, what are your name and pronouns?" And they're going around in a circle. And then they found, and I was like, "Oh my God, can they just please skip me? Please skip me." Like, of course it wasn't gonna skip me, but in my mind, I was like, I hope I could just be invisible. I don't want to be identified. I don't want to, and they were like, "And what about you? What is your name and pronouns?" And I just looked at them, and I was like, "I don't know." And they're like, "What do you mean you don't know?" I was like, "I just don't know." And they were like, "Well, do you want us to refer to you as they?" I was like, "I don't know." Just and they were like, "What about your name?" And I was just like, "Just say Jay. Don't even say anything else. Just say Jay. Don't refer to me with pronouns or anything. Just refer to me as Jay." All right. And the reason I'm saying this is because you did the exact same thing, right? And I was in tears, I was bawling, and then the people around me embraced me and said, "It's okay, we'll just call you Jay, don't worry." And that was so liberating because it was the first time I was able to get away from my name and my pronouns that I didn't want, which was definitely not he, him at the time, and still is, and definitely not. And so and the reason I share that with you is because I was in a space where there was no judgment. They were there. They all have had that experience. There were some people who have been transitioned for decades, to some people that were transitioning the same days that I was. And it was really important for me to be in that space where I was able to communicate with people at all different stages of their transition. And so I just can't emphasize enough can't emphasize enough how important community is to let you just be who you are and just let you just be Jay. And just and that's completely okay because that's where you are comfortable and that's where you are. I think is so powerful. And so that's what I recommend in this stage. And I will also say this too. I don't talk to my biological father anymore. That relationship is completely over. Like he refers to me as his dead son. And so sometimes the journey is not pretty and sometimes you lose people that you care about a lot, but the people who stuck by me, including members of my own family and my friends that stuck by me from the beginning, are the people I will fucking die for because they were there through the hardest part of my journey. And you will find those people through this journey and transition, and just give yourself patience, give yourself grace as you work your way through this because we're all at different points of our journey. So I hope that's helpful. I know that was a lot of my own personal story, but I felt it was relevant to what you're going through now.
How does
Yeah,
it all land?
could I ask you?
Yeah, go. Sorry, I was trying
Yeah,
to prompt
please.
you to go. Go for it.
Okay, I just have one more thing I wanted to ask you girls about. Um,
Mhm.
so how do I proceed with my family? Like, what do I do? Because they live in Tennessee, I live in Idaho because they're kind of abusive. But I mean, what do
Mhm.
I do? I mean, do I just stop seeing them? Is that what I do? Or
Well, are you financially dependent on them in any way?
no?
Okay, that's the most critical part. I think if you're financially dependent, it changes the answer. But since you're not, what I would say is I think this approach doesn't work for everyone. So if you feel like this doesn't apply to you, please feel free to just throw it in the trash. And maybe Josie has something more valuable to offer. I feel like the mistakes that I learned from my transition that I would do differently if I had a second shot with a more developed brain um, would be to not. I feel like when I was doing it, I was really asking like kind of for their permission. Not that I thought that they needed to sign off on my transition, but it was more like there is a natural human instinct to want your parents to care about you and to affirm the things that you're doing. And so I was really trying to like present it to them. And I also sat them aside and made it this big thing where I was like, hey, I need to tell you about this thing that's going on. And I think that kind of caused it to be a bigger deal. I think that you should, when you decide, what direction you want to do for yourself, you should just say, hey, mom and dad, I know we have some disagreements about this, but this is how I feel about myself. This is how I'm going to be proceeding. Here's how I would like you to talk to me. And if you're unwilling to do that, maybe we can still have a relationship, but we're going to have to set some boundaries about like what things we're able and not able to talk about. I'm not advocating for you cutting them off right away. That is a decision you have to make completely on your own when you feel like it's become too much and you just can't reach them. But I think it's good to try to start with enforcing some boundaries. Something like if you can't use my pronouns, just use my name. And let's not talk about anything gender related. If you want to talk about school and work, then so be it. But let's not get into anything gender related because it's going to hurt my feelings and you're going to get upset and it's just not worth us risking a relationship on that. But if you feel like that doesn't apply to you at all and you couldn't handle it that way or do it that way, then maybe Josie's got something better.
Yeah. And I'll
Yeah,
share mine. So go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say. I mean, I've tried to have honest conversations with them, but they're
Mhm.
also, like right wing Trumpers, and you can't really reason with people like that. Like as much as I hate to say it, I just don't think you can
Yep.
reason.
I agree. There is
That's
no
true.
threshold where that happens. Yeah. And
Yep.
if you feel like you need, that means that you can't reach them, then maybe that's something you have to work on accepting. Like, but yeah, go ahead, Josie.
So my biological father, he is also a right wing Trumper that lives and in goes to Florida often because my aunts are there who are also Trumpers, and I don't speak to any of that side of the family anymore. So I totally sympathize and understand that. Um, this is what I will say because I think Arden said it very well, especially since you can support yourself and you're able to do this. I also when I first told my family, I actually was already on hormones for 2 months because I didn't want them to talk me out of it, right? Because I also cared about them and respected their wants, and I wanted for them to approve. And I was like, nope, I've already went to a doctor. They've already diagnosed me. This is how it's going to be. This is what it's going to be. I'm going to take my medicine. You can't stop me type situation where it's like, I've already been doing this for 2 months. That type of thing to like give them the ease of mind of like, no, I'm doing this medically, whatever. And like you said, there's no way of reasoning. I didn't have a very happy, well, I will say this, there's a happy ending to this story. I'll start there. Um, my mother, even my sister, and the people that I thought were going to have my back, they really were they were a little upset, and they were upset for their own reasons. A lot. And my sister said that she was upset with me because I didn't tell her sooner, but there was a point in time where they were kind of like waiting and seeing to see if it was actually going to happen. There was a lot of disbelief. There was just like, maybe it's just like a phase. Maybe she'll come back around, or maybe she won't like the effects on her body, and then she'll come back. Kind of situation that happened. My mom had a lot of hard time with the transition of my voice because I worked very hard on changing my voice, because it gave me a lot of dysphoria. So I worked very hard to train my voice to be a little bit more higher pitched. Um, and it took about a year and a half before that relationship on both sides were completely repaired to a point where we have a strong relationship now 5 years later. 5 years will be my transition date in March. Um, and I have a great relationship with my family, my mother, my sister, and my nieces and my nephew and all of that. But it took a minute to get there. And a lot of them had to see it first. And I hate to say that, but it was a lot of like, for my mother, I think she wanted to make sure that I was happy. For my mother, it was like she thought she was trying to protect me, to try to say, no, this is bad. Like, I don't know if this is a good idea. She was trying to protect me, I think, in her mind, where she was like, your life is going to be hard, right? That's kind of what she thought was going to happen.
Hmm.
She was like, you're not, transition isn't going to work. And my mother didn't know the miracles of transition with hormone therapy and surgical care and all of that type of stuff. But when I came back, and I think I may have shared this before, I came back to Texas, where because I grew up in conservative area as well. When I came back to Texas for my grandmother's funeral, and I came in with, like all in black, like a good formerly Catholic Latina should, in the whole grieving attire, and my mother saw me from who I was after a year and a half of transition. She embraced me as her daughter. And that was it took a long time to get there. It took a long time to get there, but I got there. And I'm not going to say it's going to be the same for you, but there was a moment when my uncles didn't even recognize me at that funeral. They were like, "Who are you here with? Who are you dating?" Like they thought I was dating somebody in the family. And I'm like, "No, look in my eyes, look who I am." And they're like, "Oh my God." And they were like shocked, they were stunned, right? And they were also stunned that my family didn't tell them. So yeah, and it was hard. It was hard. And it took the death of a loved one to kind of bring everybody together to kind of see me for who I was. And so I'm not saying that that's the way it's going to be for you, but time is a very powerful tool. You your voice will brighten, your spirit will brighten, and your eyes will brighten. You will be a brighter, happier person. And if your parents give you the opportunity to express that to them as your full self, I'm sure they're going to be like, well, at least Jay's happy.
Mm.
Right. And that to me is what a parent ultimately wants. And if that's the case, and they let that go through outside of the ideology, and I'm not saying it happens every time because my biological father refuses to see me. He refuses to look at pictures of me. He refuses to hear my voice because he knows that if he has an opportunity to see me as who I am right now, I'm a pretty awesome person. And he's going to be like, damn, why am I not a part of that person's life? And it will hurt him. So he'd rather live in ignorance, blind to the fact of who I am, to help him live in ignorance. And at least that's something I tell myself. And so it's not going to be easy, but it sounds like you have enough distance and enough courage and strength to at least have a community there. But I talked at you for a while, so I would love for you to respond.
Well, it's okay. I called for advice anyways, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
I don't know. I mean, I think my parents noticed my happiness for a while, but there's a lot of negative things that came along with transitioning, especially transitioning on the job.
yeah.
And I'm not getting into
Yeah.
details, but I had to get the ACLU involved. It was that bad.
Mm.
Oh, wow. I will say, Jay, if it's any like helping like assuaging kind of the pain you're going through right now, your experience aligns completely with the data. Like for detransition happens quite infrequently in the trans community, but when it does happen, it is almost universally what you and I went through. We were harassed or not accepted or othered. Our lives were made more difficult. And so if this sounds like the conclusion you came to, the conclusion I came to was I would rather be miserable and hate my body and who I am than deal with the hate that I'm getting all the time and made to feel like such like subhuman trash. But I think the thing that pulled me out of that was like that's like living for other people, you know, like that's me refusing my happiness for other people's comfort because they're going to bully me. And I think eventually I just realized like I would rather endure the pain of people giving me a hard time all the time and knowing that I'm good with myself and at the end of the day I'm comfortable with who I am than trying to appease them so that they'll stop harassing me. Like that's no way to live. And you know, wherever you end up, I hope that you do it for you and not for other people or because you're afraid of how they're going to react.
That's right.
Yeah. But also my mom and dad would use that against me because they'd be like, well, obviously transition to make you happier because I was dealing with a lot of harassment. And of course the death threats, just like the general trans things we deal with.
But I think that's
and they
wrong,
use
right?
that against me. And they're like, transitioning doesn't make you happy. See, like you made a mistake. And that's the way they framed it.
Yeah, but they're just wrong.
They're not seeing you. That's what they're seeing everything around you. They're not looking at you, right? That's what it's about. It's about doing something for yourself. And I share this about my own name, right? I added an I to my life. I literally added one letter to my name because I did something for me. And I had to frame it that heavily in my own self for me to understand that I was doing it for the love of myself and not for the love of others. And once you're able to do that, others will love you too. Because when you love yourself, others will love you too.
Maybe it won't be your parents, by the way, but
Yeah.
honestly, if your parents like sometimes like Josie said, sometimes they're going to need more time to come around and sometimes they might not come around, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a life where you are happy with yourself. Like it's so hard to, I don't know, swallow that pill. Like I'm fortunate that my mom is still great and we have a good relationship, but like my dad and I are never going to have a good relationship. And I tried just before the election cycle, this like a few months ago. And I was like, hey, throwing out another line for you. Like maybe consider like how your voting is going to affect me because like this is going to really negatively impact my life. And I feel like it would be a really good show of love and like solidarity if you were to tell me that at the very least you're not voting for Trump. He couldn't do it. He could not do it. He said I had the equivalent of a gun to his head by asking him that, which is like just an insane self-victimization like narrative that he's trapped in. And it's a lot of those Trumpers, I think a lot of them, they care about how other people see them more than they care about the well-being of their kids, and that sucks. And it's narcissistic and shitty, but doesn't mean that you shouldn't be yourself. Well, Jay, we do have to move on, take our rest of our callers, but I want to give you a chance to give any last thoughts before we move on.
No, I just wanted to thank you ladies for your time, and I enjoy the shows, and I hope you all have a nice day.
You too, Jay.
Yeah.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah.
Hey, do you think this clip just fell out of a coconut tree? No. It did. Okay, now technically I did build the channel into a coconut tree and it did fall out. And also that our internet router is up there. Actually, in a lot of ways, this production fell out of a coconut tree, but we could only afford that because people like you supported us for $5 a month over where is that, Eric?
Patreon.com/call the line, and
that's right.
Jimmy will,
you got it.
Yeah, be grateful. Yeah.
We have an exclusive patron podcast over there. Check it out. Thumbs up with it, Eric. We talked about this in the meeting. We have to both.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go.